Happy Monday, y'all. I am playing with starting a new thing. Um, I am gonna see if y'all respond to this and how fun it is for me. But I've had several people tell me, if I'm honest, over the years, but I'm hearing it more now, that they're actually really curious about my personal process. And as somebody who has been trained originally as a psychotherapist, I think it's in my cells somewhere, maybe not in my cells, it's in my conditioning to really focus on service and focus on the other person when I'm in my sacred service. So I don't even think to share about my own journey beyond what I post on social media or share in my newsletters. I'm on this rapid path of growth. I joke about it, that it's like I'm here in this lifetime to grow a shitload. So there's a lot going on in my world typically, and the people closest to me seem to really get a lot from hearing it. And then I've had clients, when I share personal, very mindfully personal information, feel really affirmed and nourished, I guess, by that sharing. So I'm challenging my own stuff, my own tendency to really focus on other, and just, I'm going to share some stuff. I'm going to hop on here. Sometimes it'll be live. Sometimes it will be recorded, but it will be within 24 hours of the upload. So it's fresh and it's real. It's not like this carefully constructed self-disclosure in service of marketing or anything like that. Like, this is going to be me being real with my people. Responsibly real. I'm not going to like give y'all my wounds and be like, fix it, because that doesn't feel good ever. But I'm going to share. I'm going to be human. We need more people talking about the real, not the like, I did this real thing where I was rolling around, getting dirt in my mouth and getting scraped up by life. And now I'm here. Look at how great I am. Like, there's a place for that for sure. It leads to hope, but there's also a place for like, oh, I'm in it. This is how I'm navigating being in it right now. So we'll see what's up each week. Sometimes it might be something I'm real excited about, sometimes it might be what I'm challenged with, but we're going to see what comes out of my face when I show up, basically. So I'm going to call this Magic Mondays Behind the Curtain. We're pulling the curtain. And I'm going to talk about what's going on. So the first thing that is up, I kind of sat here and tuned in a little bit, getting centered, because I could talk about a lot of stuff. But what comes up for me first is a theme that I've navigated in my own life for the whole time I've been in private practice, even when I was a therapist, now as a coach. This idea of, sometimes our work is not our work, meaning for a conscious entrepreneur, for somebody who's really committed to doing heart-centered, purposeful work in the world, we don't get the luxury of having, I don't want to say we don't get the luxury of having steady work, but in the way I mean it, like sometimes our personal process is the thing that we need to navigate in order to do the thing we say we want to do and be in the world for and with others. So sometimes we don't get to do them both at the same time. And this is one of my issues with a lot of business coaching in the world, is there's kind of this like model of steadiness and there's not a lot of room for the real human experience. And for me personally, how this is showing up now, I mean, it's shown up a million times in my entrepreneurial career, but it's showing up right now in that I did this 2-month sabbatical, and it was amazing. It was the especially my cross-country trip, it was the most joyful I've ever been in my life, ever. I'm 43. And then I came back and I had new eyes on my work in the world. I had a new commitment to really aligning with what is mine to do and not just doing stuff because I can do a lot of stuff. And so I'm only, like a little bit back from that. Maybe close to 3 weeks back, maybe 2.5, something like that. No, yeah, not even 3 weeks. And I'm watching myself put this pressure on to have it all figured out. Now, side note, I knew when I committed to 2 months of sabbatical that it wasn't going to be enough. I knew it intuitively. I knew there was going to be a part of me that wanted more. And life, right? Like if you've been following me, you know that my husband was on the Appalachian Trail for much of last year, changing his career. We have very real stuff. We got mortgage and stuff, And so I had that, right? And then I came back and I watched myself, my very good achiever self, be like, okay, let's do the thing. But it wasn't time to do the thing. And life gave me a whole bunch of experiences. I've had some health stuff come up. I've had my deepest core wound is that I have for most of my adult life been estranged from my father, and my stepmother passed away last week, which, I've done tons of work around my relationship with my dad and feel so much peace, and actually am able to really feel a lot of love for him and compassion. That doesn't mean I want to be in relationship with him. There's boundaries that keep the love able to flow. But what's interesting is here I am, like getting so excited about my next Mr. Mind group and getting excited about these new offerings and closing the door on my longer term one-on-one coaching and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like in that, not to mention all the other growthiness, like having lots of beautiful conversations with my partner, all this kind of stuff. And then I find out that my stepmom passed away, who I haven't seen in years and years. And what was really interesting is I didn't expect it to open up. So my 43-year-old self can process a level of pain and emotion and energy that my, let's say, 20-year-old self could not, and certainly not that my 6-year-old self or 12-year-old self could. So when my stepmother passed, what it did was I ended up needing to engage from a distance with my dad directly. And what it showed me was a couple of things. It showed me that, one, I wasn't in a place where I would get knocked off kilter by that relationship anymore. I wasn't scared for the first time. Like there's scared, and then there's like nervous system fear that you can't control. And I was good in the head for years and years and years, but my body still would kind of go when anything around that would come up, and that wasn't there. So that was a success. And because I'm more in my power and more anchored in myself, what it did was it opened the cork on very, 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 very old energy that I had to suppress to survive. And so it was inconvenient. This is all connected. And I know if you're on this path, you've experienced some version of this, whether it's a health scare or a relationship challenge of some sort or financial issues, like it's part of the journey that we think we're doing one thing. Like I'm going back into my business and getting all excited about my stuff. But really what I was called to do was lighten my load and release stuff that I didn't even know I was still carrying. So I was in some pretty deep grief for, I would say, a solid day and a half, if not, it probably was creeping before I even really knew it was a lighter bit. But I had to be with it. I had to cry. I had to give voice to that little girl who couldn't voice things when she was young. I had to really watch myself, trust myself with my boundaries. And here is the thing. It all impacts my business, right? Like, can I be steady and unwavering when the world around me gets swirly, or when, let's say, pain is on the scene, or, who knows what it is. That is something that connects to a core wound that is very personal to me, but it also connects to my ability to show up in my business in a certain way. So there's this kind of strengthening and affirming of that muscle through this personal experience. And when we carry pain that we don't even know we're carrying, it is heavy. It is heaviness, and it affects how we perceive things. It affects what we expect from life. If I'm carrying a lot of grief, that is taking up space. That is space that may prevent joy. It may prevent abundance from flowing in. So it's like, I sit with this idea a lot of paradox. I think paradox is medicine that most of us need. It's a spiritual concept. Like, what if I don't judge anything as bad? We get to say things are hurtful. We get to say things are harmful. We get to say things are unfair. We get to say all of that. But what if I sit in the space of, okay, it's all just happening, and allow the ing, allow the happening to happen, which is what I committed to doing while all this was going on, right? Like, I allowed myself to get frustrated that I couldn't honor my ego's need to, like, get back in the saddle and do my work and blah, blah, blah. And I honored the fact that I was healing the deepest, darkest stuff of my life to create space for something else moving forward. It's like, that was my work. I wasn't meant to crank out 1 million social media posts. I wasn't meant to call in a bunch of new clients that week. I was meant to heal, to become the version of me who could do those things, right? Our ego gets to have all kinds of temper tantrums that it wants to in those situations. But that's an example of what it can really look like when we're in that space, and we have the parts that are kicking and screaming. I certainly did. And I also had the part that I've so lovingly cultivated over the years that was like, this is exactly what you need to be doing right now. This is your medicine. This is your healing. So the other thing that came up for me this week was core wounds heal in divine timing. We have, especially those of us in the wellness healing industry, I think a lot of times we don't even realize how much that industry subscribes to this quick fix mentality of, like, if you just get it right, it won't hurt, it will go away, whatever. You know what I'm saying? There's this linear upward path that healing is supposed to take. And often we are not even conscious that's the expectation we're having. And so core wounds heal in spirals, and they don't heal in a way that they go away. They heal in a way that we relate to them differently. And that's the example I think that came up with my dad is I related to that wound in a more empowered way than I ever had, and therefore allowed myself to feel in a more expansive way than I ever had, right? Like, just because we're feeling grief doesn't mean the wound is worse. Sometimes it means that the wound is healing. And that it's kind of like popping a zit or a boil or something more disgusting and pussy, right? Like, sometimes that is the most detoxifying, loving release we can give ourselves is that movement of energy, that release. So I think it's so funny how the sun is playing with me while I sit here and record this. So there's all of that. And then with that, I've had this really interesting experience of, I've been looking, I don't want to say looking, because I don't really push in that way anymore. I've been open to my next, like a mentor or a guide in my life, because I'm very, very selective about that, because the how intuitive I am and how attuned I am to resonance and alignment and integrity, it can be challenging for me to find somebody who really fits me in the way that I need them to. And I was listening to a podcast, and it was actually somebody who is a guest a couple of times on a podcast I listened to. And the first time I heard her, I was like, ooh, I like her energy. And then, however many months later, popped up again. And I went, okay, got it. And I looked her up and I booked a session, and I haven't had that session yet, but it's archetypal in nature. And what she does is she looks at my astrological chart and has her own system of exploring and understanding my archetypal nature. Yeah. I'm going to say this because I think it could resonate with some of you, because my people tend to have some of this going on. So before I start talking about it, this woman's name is Karen Hawkwood. I want to make sure if I give anything about her that I'm naming her name. And so she sent me my top archetypes, and then she has these audio recordings that I've been listening to, and I've been like listening. I listened to my top 2, and it was very interesting because it all connects back to core wound stuff, right? Like everything is connected in my world. It's like a big web or constellation. That's how my brain works. And so the fact that this pops up while my stuff with my dad is up was fascinating, because what came up, the top 2 archetypes, one is an archetype that has this element of, she talks about it kind of like an electron microscope. Like I have such a heightened level of sensitivity that it can be really interesting to exist in the world, seeing and feeling as deeply as I do. That's my about the top archetype, which is what makes me really great at my job, but also has historically made me a threat to people who didn't want to be seen and who were more committed to whatever it might be, to hiding, to suppressing, to running. When I'm around, I can't not see. And I think that's where some of my core insecurities came from, was that I learned early to judge and not trust myself, because people around me couldn't be with that high sensitivity. I actually have a dear friend who's kind of like a second mom, and she told me years ago, she said, Megan, most people, metaphorically speaking, let's say they've got a rug in their living room. There is all kinds of shit piled under there. There's chairs, there's tables, there's rakes, there's flower pots, whatever. And they're just walking around the edges of the rug, like nothing to see here, nothing to see here. They might trip on it periodically, and they're like, oh, what was that? She said, you, however, if there is a pea under that rug, you are going to be like, everybody stop. There is a pea under that rug, and we're going to need to look at it and investigate it. And so this woman who came into my life when I was very young, she just happened to be a neighbor of mine, right? Divine, tells me this in my adult life. And I was like, yeah, that's very me. And obviously it is in my astrological chart, even it's in my archetypal design that is separate from my life experiences. And so there's a part of me too that is being asked to reclaim the story around that sensitivity, which I've done a boatload of work around. Of course, the fact that I call myself as an intuitive and do the work I do speaks to that. And there's always more. I watch how I give too many disclaimers about my sensitivity and my needs, whether it's noises or textures or like who knows what. I watch myself do that, and I'm like, what if I didn't? Because the other archetype that came up was this essence of wildness, like ferocity, like apex predator energy that just wants what I want, wants to get what I want, is protective as hell, and is kind of like ferocious or fierce in its nature. So it's really interesting as I'm, purging all of this stuff. There's this new it's not completely new. I know I'm a Leo, and I tell people all the time, like, I am all love and light until you fuck with one of my people. And I don't get mean, but I get fierce. And I will protect the people I care most deeply about. I will stand for them, right? Whether it's humanity or certainly, like don't mess with my dog, don't mess with my kid, don't mess with my husband. This kind of like, I feel that in my body, even if I don't act on it, because we're pretty safe. I don't need to act on it, but I feel it come up. And so it's been this week for me of clearing out the basement and then deciding what to integrate of this. It feels like an upgraded or renewed identity. Like, who would I be if I kind of gave no fucks about going after what I wanted? And who would I be if I knew I was so sensitive, which I am, and I know, but had no shame, guilt, or judgment about it ever? Like, how would that impact my life? And I'm going to put that to you too. If you're watching this, clearly you're meant to watch this, and there's probably something in that for you too, of like, what does it look like? What does fierce sensitivity look like? It's kind of like there's this ferocity and this sensitivity, again, paradox. And what could life look like if those parts of you were more fully embraced? Because I believe, I might have those archetypes really strong. They might be primary for me, but everybody's got them to some extent. And being curious about that feels important. So again, my work this past week, because it's Monday, so I'm kind of speaking in arrears, has not been so much my work. My work has been my work. And I've done this cycle, this pattern enough times to know that what is on the other side of doing the work is doors opening that I couldn't have expected, right? Like, after these purge recalibration weeks for me, these deep healing, like kicked core wound weeks, I've said for years, there's magic on the other side. And I know part of that might be just how I move through the world. It might not be exactly like you do, but I think it is for more people than realize it, which is why I'm saying it. So, like, what if we trusted our cycles and seasons? What if we trusted our more inward work in service of the outer work? What if we valued the inner work as much as the outer, more productive work, more other affirmed work? Like, what kind of a paradigm could we create? How humanized would our relationships, our work, our businesses be if we allowed that? So that's what I'm sitting with this week. That's what's behind the curtain on this magical Monday. And I'm very curious how this lands for you. So send me a DM, post a comment. Let me know. Do you like magical Mondays behind the curtain? What are you feeling? And have a beautiful week.